Good morning and welcome to Crawford County CASA's 13th annual Champions for Children's Breakfast. Thank you all so much for getting up early and coming to join us. For those of you who are not familiar with CASA, CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate, and we have been a part of the Crawford County community for more than 22 years. We provide highly trained volunteers who are appointed by the courts to speak up for the best interest of abused and neglected children throughout Crawford County. These volunteers get to know the child by visiting them, asking questions. They learn about the child's history and current situation and the needs and the wishes of that child. Every child comes with a different need. Every child comes with a different wish. So these volunteers, they take all that information and they write fact-based reports to the court. When the child has a court hearing, they are the child's voice during court proceedings. Since CASA was established, we have trained over 100 volunteers and advocated for over 300 children. That's quite a lot of children, unfortunately. This past year has been a busy, exciting year for the CASA program. At the end of 2015, CASA volunteers advocated for 17 children. So far in 2016, we have advocated for 29 children, which is a 58% increase. While we have seen a lot of growth this year, more still needs to be done for our children, who become a part of the system through no fault of their own. Currently, we have 14 wonderful CASA volunteers, but more volunteers are needed, and with your support, we can be there for the more than 70 children who do not have a CASA volunteer. Currently, there are 104 children adjudicated dependent, which means now the court's involved with that child, and 6 children pending adjudication. So more children are coming into the system. But we are all working hard, those that work with the children involved with the system, guardian ad litems, who's attorneys for the children, children and youth services caseworkers. We're all pulling together to do what we can for each child. So this morning, breakfast event, you will hear from multiple people. Some of them include Brandon and Stacy Huff, whom I've known for quite some time now, and I continue to be amazed by their amazing hearts. They give so much to the kids that come into their care. They will talk about their experience as foster parents and their interactions with CASA. CASA Board President Gary Elizio will be giving the CASA vision, and then we'll wrap it up with a special invitation from Paula DiGiacomo, CASA Board Secretary, for you to join those who support CASA's mission and efforts. So thank you all for coming.
Good morning. My name is Gary Elizio. I'm CASA president, the outgoing president, and I'd encourage you, please continue to eat, but we do have a promise that we try to get you out of here this morning in an hour. So we are going to start our program. Thank you all for coming again on behalf of the board. It's so nice to see so many people. You'll see our sponsors that are scrolling through the presentation. You'll recognize many of these names. These are businesses who continue year after year to give back to our community. So I would encourage you to patronize them when you're deciding who you work with in our county. I became involved with CASA, as many of you know, several years ago because I saw firsthand the work that our volunteers do in court, which is oftentimes behind the scenes. Not everyone knows what CASA does, but it's a pretty simple mission. We fight, our volunteers fight for abused and neglected kids in Crawford County. They go into court and they tell the judge where it's really at with the child that they're advocating for. Oftentimes, they are the only constant force advocating for a child. Caseworkers might change, judges might change, parents are fighting for what the parents want, but it's the volunteer that focuses on what's best for the child. For people who are watching, thank you, Armstrong, for broadcasting this this week. If you want to find out more about CASA, go to crawfordcasa.org. With 3 clicks, you can donate if you're so inclined, or decide to get involved at other levels, such as trying to become a volunteer. We have several volunteers here in the audience. I'd ask them just briefly to stand up so we can recognize them. Thank you so much. Volunteers often spend hundreds of hours, potentially in a year, attending court hearings, meeting with kids, doctors, teachers, principals, all on behalf of the child that they're working with. I am going to keep my remarks brief today and let our incoming president, Diane Patton, speak to her vision of CASA, but I did want to mention the last several years I've spent most of my minutes speaking with you focused on the challenges that CASA was facing. I can tell you that CASA is thriving, and it's because of everybody in this room and the supporters who aren't here today that are supporting CASA. The challenges haven't gone away. We're completely underfunded. Government is completely underfunded, so we don't receive any government money, but it falls to the community and community supporters like you that allow CASA to continue. I do want to point out a few examples. It was a few years ago that when we lost our funding from the county, I went to Attorney Wes Rowden, who we rent space from for our office, and I said, Wes, I don't know how we're going to make it work for CASA. And he said, well, will it help if you don't have to pay rent anymore? And he continues to do that. He pays for the lights. We don't pay rent, so that helps us. Other companies make such a difference. They're not only writing checks, but Optical Filters, for example, donates books to the children, gas cards for our volunteers. And wonderful employees at Tech Molded Plastics, where Brandon works, have an angel giving tree where they wrap gifts that our children receive each year. And then the Thetas from Allegheny. What a wonderful group of young women. Over the past 6 or 7 years, they've raised over $15,000 for CASA with a breakfast event they have each year. And I can tell you, when you're operating on a $50,000 a year budget, that several $1,000s that they bring in each year makes a big difference. So thank you so much for that. Diane Patton is our incoming president. She brings with her an excellent mix of emotional passion, having served as a volunteer. So she's been in the volunteer's shoes, which is what brought her back as a board member. And she works at Allegheny College in fundraising, so you can all expect a phone call or an email, I'm sure, sometime soon. and I hope you do take that call. It's been a pleasure to serve as president. Before I sit down, I would like my current board to stand up so I can recognize them. Just an outstanding group. Thank you, everybody. Diane.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Gary. I want to thank the other board members, too, for their show of support in electing me president. It's humbling, and it's quite an honor. I asked myself, how did I get here to be board president? When I first decided to be a volunteer, it was more of a journey for me. I have to tell you a quick little story about how the CASA vision started with me. It was about 1993, and I was driving down Liberty Street in Meadville, not quite to Linden Street, and there's this little toddler dressed in a diaper, holding an empty bottle, walking along the side of the road. And I'm thinking to myself, what? You know, how can this be? Where is she going? Where did she come from? You know, where are her parents? What's going on? So I had my own toddler in his car seat in the back of my car. So I pulled over, put my flashers on, told him, you know, Mommy's going to go help this little girl. I don't know what's going on. Locked the car. He was safe. No problem there. So I walked back to this little girl, and she couldn't tell me who she was, where she was from, where she was going, or anything. And I thought, okay, what do I do in this situation? It's before cell phones, right? You can't just call 911. So I thought, okay, I'll put her in the car and take her to the police station. No, somebody's going to see me. They're going to think I'm abducting this child, you know. So I thought, I can't just stand here on the side of the road with this child. What am I going to do? So I turned back a little ways, and I saw 2 teenage girls on a porch on a house, and they were kind of watching this whole situation unfold. And so I took the little girl and I walked back to them, and I said, do you happen to know where this little girl lives or where she's from? They looked at each other, they looked at me, and they said, yeah, I think she lives in the blue house. So I said, would you mind, can you get her back to where she belongs? And they said, yeah, we can do that. Well, fast forward a little bit, I found out that the blue house was a known crack house in Meadville. So I felt horrible, here I put this child back into this situation. But at that time, it was around 1993, I had no idea what I could have done otherwise. Coincidentally, 1993 was the year that CASA was founded in Crawford County. So there, was already something playing around there. Fast forward 10 years, a coworker had a pamphlet at work about CASA. And she said, I'm interested in doing this. And I said, oh, can I read the brochure? It's, kind of neat. So I thought, well, this is something I can do. And then I remembered the situation way back then with this little girl. And I thought, yeah, this is really something I can do. So I filled out an application, got my references in, contacted the CASA office, and went through the 35 hours of training, the initial training, and was assigned my first case. First case lasted about a year, and the family ended up moving to Oil City, so the case was transferred to Venango County. The next case I was assigned to, I was on for about 4.5 years. Really complicated case and took a lot out of me emotionally and mentally, but a fantastic outcome with a kinship adoption. So I decided to take a little break from CASA, and then fast forward a few more years, and I was asked to serve on the board. So here I am. Yeah, just wanted to give you a little bit of background on me. So as Gary said, CASA has weathered a few extremely lean years, but sometimes in bad times we tend to make the best decisions. And I think under Gary's leadership and the rest of the board has done a tremendous job of keeping CASA strong in Crawford County. So board members, again, thank you for your service. So Gary asked me to speak a little bit about the vision for CASA moving forward now that we're kind of at, did my microphone just go off? Can you all hear me? No? Tap the bottom, Cindy says. Okay, are we back on? No. Tap, not tapping. Back on? No. All right. All right, well, I'm going to just talk loud, if that's okay. So CASA in the next couple of years, when I started to think about it, CASA literally means home. So I thought 4 great areas to concentrate on, HOME. So help, optimizing opportunities, meaningful engagement, and education. So help. We need to continue help, find ways for our volunteers to be involved with the kids that they serve. Our number 1 priority is to help these adjudicated children find homes, in safe permanent homes, in the shortest time possible. And you can help us by supporting our efforts to continue to do that. Optimizing opportunities for collaboration with other local nonprofits, other regional CASAs, and the state and national CASA. And our director, Cindy, you have no idea how hard she works in the office. She is our only staff person, and she does an outstanding job of spearheading the efforts. And we hope to continue to solidify new ways to work in partnership with the nonprofits in our area. So meaningful engagement, more thanking and more outreach to the community and our supporters so that there's a clear understanding of what your support really means to the success of CASA. We rely 100% on donations from people like you, corporate sponsors, and a couple of small grants. Education. Like I said, we do an outstanding job of educating our volunteers with 35 hours of initial training, and they have to complete an additional 12 hours of continuing education credits every year. That's a lot. What are we doing to educate our children? I think that's a huge thing, and this is a big thing for me. Is there a way that CASA can sponsor educational opportunities in our schools so that children know that they have resources in their teachers and their guidance counselors, and that they have safe places to tell their secrets? We need to collectively build upon the elementary school good touch, bad touch talk that all of our kids get. But we need to continue that through their middle school and high school years. They need to know that they have safe places, to tell what's going on to them. I think middle school and high school years, we can maybe help provide age-appropriate awareness of the potential dangers that they might face and who to ask for and where to get help. So CASA means home. CASA volunteers help the adjudicated children achieve safe, permanent, loving homes. And CASA means home, and you guys can help us by supporting their efforts. So that's the vision for the future. And I'd like to now introduce Brandon and Stacy Huff, who are current foster parents, and they're going to share their story. Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't know why it's not working. Okay.
Good morning. He does this as a side job, just so you know. We are Brandon and Stacy Huff. We are foster parents right now. We've been fostering for the past 6 years. We have 5 children that we have in our home right now. We have 4 that are adopted and 1 that we're fostering. So first off, we just want to thank you for the opportunity for having us here. CASA holds a very special spot in our hearts. We have had Cindy, and then we've had Ben and Nancy in our homes, and they've just been phenomenal. So encouraging, so loving to our family. Our kids would just get so excited when they'd see their cars pull up to our house because they knew Ben and Nancy were going to play and take pictures. So, but we're so grateful. We're grateful that you were here. There were many times, and as Brandon will share in our story, that I called Ben and Nancy and bawled my eyes out and asking them what I could do. So I'm thankful for your support. I'm thankful that there's someone that a foster family can go to and just kind of bounce ideas off of and say, hey, this is what's going on, and they share it in the courtroom. So thank you for being there for our family.
So a little bit about our story as foster parents. Stacy and I are unable to have our own children. And we wrestled with that for a handful of years, trying to figure out what we wanted to do. And just one day sort of thought, I can't remember really what put the thought in our minds, but we thought, well, maybe we'll just get licensed to be foster parents, and, we could just do that while we figure out what we want to do. And so we went and met with a person at a foster care agency, and they said, well, this licensing process, it takes a while, maybe 6 months or so, you could get licensed, and then who knows, and maybe a year after that, you might have your first foster child. And I think it was maybe around 30 days later, we were licensed, and we had a 1 and a 2-year-old welcomed into our home. And so it kind of happened without us even, really realizing, what was happening and how quick it happened. But, we were 100% sure that it was meant to be exactly that way. And so we got our first 2, our oldest daughters, when they were 1 and 2, and then a couple years after that, we got a third daughter. We got her a day old right from the hospital, and they were all all of those cases are sort of up and down as foster parents, and you're not sure how it's going to go and how it's going to turn out and if it's going to end up in adoption or not. And thankfully, all 3 of theirs did. And so then we ended up getting a 4th foster child. A little boy, and his case was a little bit different. When we got him, he was 7 weeks old, and he had a broken femur. And then when they took him to Hammond and they did other scans and x-rays and things on him, they found that he had other fractures on his arms and on other places on his body that were different ages. And they said at Hammond the only possible cause was physical abuse. And so Here we were with this 7-week-old baby with a cast on his leg, and you can just imagine, it was difficult, and he was in our home for 19 months, and so, we've got 3 other girls. This is their brother, they're his sisters, and after 19 months, he ended up being placed back with his biological parents, and, that was, as all of you can imagine, that was probably some of the hardest times we've had in our marriage and our family. So I just have the most vivid memories of those days of putting him into the CYS vehicle, just kicking and screaming and bawling and crying, and our kids, our daughters asking us where he's at, in the days and weeks and months after he left, and it was just a very, very difficult time, and those were some of the phone calls to Ben and Nancy and to Cindy, and trying to figure out what we can do and what we're going to do, so thankfully the story has a happy ending. He not so happily, he was physically abused again with his parents, and so about 6 months later he ended up coming back to us, and it was permanent at that time, and we adopted him last April. So. But that was a really, really tough situation, and when it was all said and done, our initial reaction was like, we are not doing that again, but that's not what happened, so.
Just to add what Brandon had said, our son, like Brandon had said, he was gone from us for 6 months. Hardest time of my life, let me just say that. But when he came back to us, it was the best day ever. Oh, there we go again.
I think it's got low battery.
Okay. Oh, there we go. Anyway, it was the best day ever, and I just wanted to add something. He's going to be 4 in November, and our 5th child that we received, he's going through visits right now. And on my way to take my son, or our 5th child, to his visit, my son said, "It's okay, it's a little..." Oh, I'm just going to talk.
Here, let me have it. I'm going to change batteries.
Okay, good. He just said, "It's okay. Miss Kelly," that was our caseworker at the time, he said, "Miss Kelly's going to come pick you up. It's scary, but you'll be okay." And so it just kind of goes to show you that even though he was only 19 months old and couldn't really talk a ton, he knows, he remembers that memory of being put in the car. So they know at such a young age. We thought about giving up. As Brandon said, we thought of saying, okay, we're done, 4's good. But we also felt like, well, if God opens the door, we'll walk through it again. Well, we got the call this last August about having a 5th child, and it could not be more perfect for our family right now. We pray that, it ends up as well as our other 4 have. Thank you. But really what drove us not to give up is Brandon and I wanted a family. We did not care how we got the kids. We did not need to birth them ourselves. We just wanted to be a family. So we're very grateful to say we're a family of 7, and a lot of people look at us like we're crazy because we're walking into a restaurant with children, and our children's ages are 8, 7, 4, and 3, and 3. So we're busy. But we also just felt like God was saying, you know what? I feel like you're strong. I feel like you can handle this. Let's go again. So we're thankful that we have a family of 7 right now.
And I think, just one thing I would share personally, when we were going through some of those tough times and we're calling everybody, you just feel really helpless, and you start to get a little glimpse of maybe how some of these children feel, you know what I mean? Because they're really the ones that are, they've got all these people that are deciding their future, and everybody who's, experts in whatever areas, and a lot of times that little kid, that 19-month-old that can't talk, he's really the one that maybe feels helpless, and we don't even realize it. So, that's some of the things that have sort of, as much as we'd love to say we really don't want to do this anymore, and people ask me about foster care, and I tell them it's the best thing in the world and the worst thing in the world at the same exact time. And so we just really decided, like she said, we were like, listen, if God decides and calls us and he wants to place another kid in our home, then we're not going to say no to that. And so we ended up with a fifth one. So, and that's really it. So thank you so much for having us here this morning, and enjoy the rest of the program.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming this morning. I'm Paula DiGiacomo. I'm currently the CASA Board Secretary. And what a difference CASA volunteer advocates make in our community. And we love the foster parents. We love everyone who's involved in helping our abused and neglected children here in Crawford County. And we can't thank everyone enough, our sponsors, our volunteers, everyone who gets involved in helping CASA succeed here in Crawford County. So to build a stronger foundation for expanding our program and to provide a more stable future for CASA, today we're asking you to join our multi-year Giving Society. Some of you may already be involved with this multi-year Giving Society, and we're going to encourage more of you to join that and actually continue to do that. So at this time, I'd like to ask our table captains around the room to go ahead and pass out our envelopes with the pledge cards. CASA definitely needs your financial support. We have wonderful volunteer advocates, and we want to continue to be able to educate them, to bring in more volunteer advocates so that our judges here in Crawford County can have the assistance that they desperately need to make the right decisions so that our children can have permanency in their lives. If you take a look at the pledge card, starting at the top, the Multi-Year Giving Society pledge levels are meant to give you a sense of what your contribution can do. Your contribution will go toward the unrestricted operating funds of Crawford County CASA. The first giving level in the Sponsor a Child Multi-Year Giving Society is a pledge of $1,000 each year for 5 years. We call this our Champion of Hope level because $1,000 is approximately the initial cost of putting one volunteer in the life of one child in need for a year. So if you would consider a gift at this level, which is an average of just $83 a month, think of it as a latte a day maybe, your gift would let us provide support to one child for each of the next 5 years. The next giving level is Sponsor a Child Multi-Year Giving Society, ranges from $500 to $100 a year for 5 years. These levels sponsor training and supervision of volunteers as well as recruiting new volunteers. We know that some of you may want to designate another gift at this time to have an impact on the lives of youth in our community, and you may designate this on the form by filling out an amount of your choice. The Champion for Permanency, as you see, is $250 a year for 5 years. This supports volunteers advocating in the child's best interests. Or you can choose $100 a year for 5 years. This helps to recruit a new CASA volunteer advocate. You could also let us know that you're currently in a multi-year pledge and you will continue to honor that commitment. I'd also like to reiterate, I think Gary mentioned it earlier, you can go on to the CASA website. It's a fabulous website that's been put together. It's www.crawfordcasa.org. And consider giving through the website. And if you want to find out even more information about CASA, you can do so there. We truly appreciate whatever level of support you can give. And we look forward to meeting, hopefully, new volunteer advocates in the future and seeing you again. So thank you very much.
All right. Before we wrap up, I would like to just tell you a little bit more about a CASA volunteer before we close this event. About a month ago, I accompanied a volunteer on her visit to see the 2 girls that she has been assigned to for close to 2 years. Near the end of the visit, the mother asked me to explain CASA, so I did. The oldest, after I had my explanation and told them that volunteers do not get paid for what they do, the oldest girl then said while looking at the volunteer, "So you do this for free? You don't get paid any money?" The volunteer smiled and said, "That's right. I don't get paid, but I do this because I care about you and your sister." This little girl was really impressed by this, as am I, for it's not an easy role. At times, it can be very frustrating, heartbreaking, and it can be rewarding. These children are just like our children. They have dreams, like the teenage girl who wants to be a state trooper, another teenage girl who wants to be a nurse, or the 17-year-old boy who loves engines and wants to be a diesel mechanic. They have hopes for their future. So I thank all of you for all you do on behalf of these children and their dreams. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Stacy and Brandon. I know your heartbreaking story, but your family's in a good place. And I thank you for all you do for these kiddos. So thank you.